Who was the worst student in your high school, and what did they do that was so bad?
He put LSD in a teacher's drink and they tripped balls. 12th grade, he got arrested as he should have. He was such a little prick.
We had a girl do this back in the 80s, and people were still talking about it when I graduated in 2010. The girl spent 6 months in jail. The teacher took the rest of the year off but came back in the fall. He retired when I was a junior.
My wife was dosed her second year teaching 2 weeks into the year and was placed on disability for the entire year, plus a settlement with the school district because she should have had a co-teacher due to the number of kids in the room and did not. We argued that since the classroom was understaffed per contract, it allowed her to be dosed. We ended up traveling for 10 months that year.
He violently murdered his mother's client the summer before our senior year. His mother was a home health aide, and her client was 87 years old. He did it so he could steal her car. Now he's serving 25 to life.
I know a guy who did the opposite. Killed his mom and her home health aide. I think he is in a mental hospital still. Not sure if he has gone to trial. He used to teach children's karate.
I know a guy who did the opposite of that. He didn't kill his mom and teaches adult taekwondo.
There was a kid who walked up to the pencil sharpener and set the substitute teacher's hair on fire from behind her with a cigarette lighter, and then claimed sparks had flown out of the light switch. Yeah, he's in prison for other stuff now.
I bet he was the kid that liked to burn everything.
I was the kid that liked to burn everything. Later in life, I got a job in rocket propulsion. We're not all assholes, Lobel.
Killed a kid in the middle of class over presumably nothing. It was a vocational school, so we all had access to tools. A fight broke out in the welding shop, and one kid smashed the other kid's skull with a welding pick. I never heard what the fight started over, but it's high school, so the answer is almost certainly nothing.
That's the most insane thing I've read in a while. Who the fuck does that?
In a city near me, last year, a guy meets up at someone's house to buy an axe off them. The son, I think, of the homeowner, was sitting in the living room just minding his own business. Hadn't said a word to the buyer. Out of nowhere, the guy decides there's no better way to test the axe than to bury it in the kid's head, completely unprovoked.
Not me, but my daughter and her female friends in 9th grade. There was a boy who was disturbed who was making threats to the girls in his classes. Things like he was going to strangle them, rape them, knife them, all sorts of things. The girls told me he had photos of dead animals he'd killed, like kittens or a dog. I don't remember the specifics. Anyway, for whatever reason, my daughter felt like telling me about it for the first time well into the school year, like in November or so. I had no idea this was going on until then. I called the teacher first, who was a man, and he was afraid of this kid. Teacher said to call the principal and gave me his number. Principal said, and I quote, "Lady, I have 1,200 students to deal with on a daily basis. I can't be worried about whether your daughter is safe at school," which was the wrong thing to say, because it obviously pissed me off. He said that he put this kid and my daughter alone in a room and told them to essentially kiss and make up, called the superintendent next, who was incredibly bowled over by the incompetence of the principal. He told me to call the police, which was too late because I had already taken my daughter and 3 of her friends to the police to make reports and file for a restraining order. The next day, the principal called to apologize from the phone in the superintendent's office. The kid was removed from the classes with all of these girls, which was next to impossible, and less than a week was removed from the school. I think my daughter said that he's in prison now.
Truly terrifying. I'm glad your daughter and the other kids are safe. They were certainly in danger. Principals need to take issues like this a lot more seriously.
I can't speak to what it is like in the US, but here in the UK, schools are very numbers-driven, and actually caring for students seems to be a low priority, even going back to when I was a kid, and the head teacher always boasted about how there's no bullying at my school, despite it being rife because about the only thing he was good at was hiding it from the inspectors.
Bullied other kids mercilessly, stole cigarettes and alcohol from shops to sell to other kids for cash he'd used to buy weed, him and his shitbag mates. A few years after high school, him and 2 of his closest mates were hooning in their shitbox on the highway, playing chicken. It was nighttime, and they had their lights turned off, and they were driving on the wrong side of the road with the intent to make other people flinch and dodge before they had to. Other driver didn't even know they were there and just drove a straight path. So because of that, the other driver obviously didn't dodge or deviate, forcing them to flinch, and they dodged off the side of a road. right into a huge gum tree. All three killed instantly, 140 plus kilometers per hour impact on a hardwood tree. Small rural area, so the whole town grieved over the tragic loss of 3 young lives, but single kid who grew up around them knew better than to call it a tragedy. Bogan shitbags. Glad the other driver didn't see them and suffer their fate. Gladder that they're gone.
Swerved off a residential road at 50 miles per hour to try and run down one of the kids he bullied because he thought doing so would impress the girls he had riding in the car with him. Instead, plowed into a brick wall at 50 miles per hour, and because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt because doing so is for pussy cowards, an exact quote from him according to later testimony. He went through the windscreen, soared across the front garden of the house whose wall he hit the front wall of the house, and turned from a full human being into paste. The girl in the front passenger seat had every bone from her midsection down irreparably shattered because she had her feet up on the dashboard and is in a wheelchair. The girl in the back passenger seat cracked open her skull on the seat in front of her, was in a coma for like 2 years, and has permanent brain damage. Bastard ruined 2 people's lives because he thought vehicular manslaughter would land him a threesome.
Do you remember your terrible classmates from school? What did they do at school that you particularly remember? Share your memories in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel to see more life stories.